Hello, Nadim.
Hello.
You can get started.
You'd like me to begin speaking?
You can get started now.
Okay.
Okay. Hmm.
It's very nice to meet you all. My goodness, there's a lot of people in attendance. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have this launch in Tamil of the book I wrote, Shimmer Shake. Um, it was written almost 2 years ago, and it was very successful in English, and it's gradually been spreading into other languages. And given the importance of Tamil in the literary world, I'm really delighted that we have this edition of it available. And I'm grateful to Sentinel Nathan and his team for making that possible. I thought you might be interested in understanding just a little bit of why the book was written, I guess. Um, it starts with the reality that I was trained as a psychologist, and that gives you the first clue. I've always been fascinated by the human mind. I grew up around the world in lots of countries in Africa, lots of countries in Asia, the Caribbean, eventually in Ireland. I'm half Irish and half Egyptian. And I think all those different cultural experiences led me to always wonder about why people do what they do, how we interact with each other, what motivates us. So the human mind is what I studied. I also did some philosophy or mental and moral science, but psychology is what really mesmerized me. And when AI began to be a mass market thing, when ChatGPT launched in November 2022, almost 3 years ago now, I thought that the science of creating artificial intelligence, which completely depends on the human mind, we almost treat it as if it's a different thing now, but we created artificial intelligence. Our human minds and our creativity are what led to its creation. I thought, well, we should probably really try to study the intersection of the human mind and artificial intelligence, one of its great products, perhaps the most creative thing that the human mind has ever done. And I alighted upon publishing, what one of the world's oldest industries and something which captures human wisdom and civilization and values and beliefs and all of the things that are, part of the human condition for thousands and thousands of years, even from the oral tradition right through to Sumerian clay tablets and papyrus sheaves tied together, which I suppose were the first book and quite disposable, to the Gutenberg press, which brought, literacy and learning and wisdom from the elite classes down to the mass market. You know, Publishing captures the whole movement of civilization, and I wanted to see how that intersects with AI. So that's what the book does. It begins by saying, here's the history of publishing. It moves on to the next section, which is here's the history of AI. Then it intersects and intertwines those two things, and then moves forward more into how can publishing benefit from embracing AI? In what ways should publishing be optimistic and positive in its stance towards AI? And then, because I'm not crazy and I recognize that there are dangers with AI, there's also some sections detailing potential problems. I think there are more problems outside of publishing with AI than within publishing, like in bioscience and weaponization and the military use of it. But putting that to one side, I think AI is largely a force for good within publishing. And that's really what the book does. It narrates the build of AI in the context of the way publishing teaches us about human civilization. And the place that we've got to now, which I find quite exciting, as some of you may know, I speak about AI and publishing all around the world. And actually, it's quite interesting where that is. It's in China. It's been in Thailand. It's been across the Middle East. It's been quite a lot in India. Um, it's also a lot across a lot of Europe and North America. The only place I haven't really spoken much about AI is in South America. So I sort of have a global context, not a comprehensive one, but a fairly varied sample of the way people around the world and in publishing are feeling about AI. And it's true to say that I think emerging markets like India and absolutely China are being the most practical about embracing AI and just getting on with it. But globally, whether one country is ahead of another in the embrace doesn't really matter for the moment. What is true is that they have the same characteristics. Publishing is accepting AI for corporate efficiency first. So for qualifying what I hate, as an author, I hate the term slush pile. I think it's so disrespectful to the hard work and creativity of authors, as if it's just like some dripping mass. It isn't that. It's a whole pile of hard work that people have thought about. But the slush pile needs qualification, and AI can easily go through that and say, here's a genre, here's a type, here's a differentiating dimension to this particular manuscript, so that editors are in a much better position to choose where to apply their added value expertise. So I see it there. I see it in things like warehouse efficiencies. I see it in the simplification of royalties and rights contracts. There are many places where publishing has been confident to say this actually works well within the operations of publishing. And that's fine. That takes a lot of skill. That takes quite a lot of human ingenuity to, create new workflows and do new things with. And I'm very pleased that AI is being adopted that way. Where it's a bit more hesitant is in the adoption of AI for creativity. I call it creative emancipation. And I'm quite idealistic about this, I'll confess. I think there are almost 8 billion people on Earth, and that means that there are probably 8 billion creatives on Earth as well. But they haven't been lucky enough, most of them, to learn to write very well or to make music very well or to create pieces of art. And they need help articulating their ideas, bringing them to fruition. I'm not saying that AI should write for them. In fact, I specifically don't advocate that. I think it's a bad use case for AI, particularly in kind of literary fiction and more creative pieces of writing. But I do think that AI helps to bring many of us to better ideation, better research, better articulation of what it is that we're seeing in the world. And it can help us, therefore, to express it and bring it to the attention of others. I think that's going to happen more. And just in my own experience as an author, I've been writing, I've just finished a series of children's stories into a collection, which I hope will be published soon. And I used a lot of different pieces of AI for that, which I found really interesting as an author, none of which diminished my creativity. I think actually it enhanced my creativity. So, for example, I had written about 25 stories, and I really couldn't tell after a few years of writing them and reviewing them which were the strongest ones. So I gave it to an AI and I said, out of these 25 stories, which 10 do you think might be the most suitable as an initial collection, and in which order should they run? And, so quickly it came back with a really good, reasoned argument about why these particular 10 in this particular order might work best. So that was an initial thing of just helping me to shape a collection of work that I'd done. I then shared it with a human editor who worked through it a lot with me. She's actually an Indian, a very senior Indian editor in chief at a publishing house, and she gave me lots of feedback about the way it could be improved, and then invited me to use an AI editing platform. And I thought, oh, come on, I've just had this fantastic human editor helping me. How's a machine going to help me to edit better? And even though I'm such a pro AI guy, I was really skeptical about how this could work. It's called Editrix. And it was amazing. It said, I can't remember whether it was exactly the third story or not, but it said, having looked at the 10 stories, you don't seem to have a colonialist attitude and, you don't seem to think of yourself as a superior person. That's true. I don't. But in one of your stories, there's a vignette, an interaction between a boy and another boy from a village where the guy who comes from the bigger house seems to think he's superior and it could give a sense of expat superiority. You should think about rewriting that. So it was a really subtle, nuanced piece of feedback to a writer that I found amazing. I had done some of this while writing Shimmer Don't Shake, which almost 2 years ago now, but the AI wasn't as advanced then. It wasn't quite as nuanced and finesse. So this is the speed at which it's going. It's truly working well to help authors to bring things to life. I'm also seeing AI working on the format of books. Probably everybody in the room, including me, loves a printed book. It has a smell, it has a shape, it has a feel, it looks nice on your shelf. We're probably never going to discard printed books. But it is an unusual product in that very few products nowadays don't have a feedback loop to the manufacturer or the producer. And when somebody buys a book, you know very little about what they thought of it, how they read it, where they started, where they stopped, what they found most exciting. And most other products, there is a feedback loop that helps to improve things. So I've seen an AI company recently produce what I call living books, which are it looks like just an e-book to begin with, but you can click it, as at the press of a button into being an audiobook. You can get the audiobook to change, the speed of its speaking, the voice, and all the rest of it as you'd expect. But as you progress, you can also get it to send a passage to one of your friends, like Richard, who will be talking soon after me. My publisher, I could send a passage out of a book and say, "Hey, Richard." So this living book, done with AI, a new format for publishers, allows you to send passages and to interact with them. And of course, you can also get to the end of the book and say, "I really hated this book, and I think I need an antithesis to its thesis." And it'll say, well, these three books have got completely different perspectives on this particular thing that you're reading. And so you can suddenly have a book that you can read, you can listen to, you can interact with friends around, you can argue with. It's, AI, not just kind of extending an encyclopedia with a CD-ROM with more content, but actually bringing to life something. So I'm seeing AI increasingly spreading through experiments and initiatives throughout publishing, different companies beginning to apply it in different ways. Generic AI already being brilliant, but applied AI, like Ailaysa's, which, automates so much of the publishing workflow, like Editrix, which does a specific editing job, like Sinai, which does these living books with AI. And all of it is just helping to bring authors' work to life and publishers to have more revenue, to have more opportunities to bring the works that they invest in so carefully to the attention of the public and to have them purchased. So coming back specifically to Shimmer Don't Shake, it was first published in English by Richard, by Mensch Publishing in London. Forbes licensed it for a year and did some marketing of it, which was very helpful. And then we started progressing into other languages. I think the first one that was published after English was Greek, and the translation for that was done by Ailaysa. So the company run by Sentinel Nathan, who also did the Tamil translation, and who has published it under his publishing house. Also coming down the line are Spanish, a huge global language. We're translating using the same technology and opening it up to that huge reading population. And I was just this week, I was in Casablanca at the African Publishers Network third conference, and there are people from all over Africa there. And immediately when they saw what Sentinel could do with this technology, they have commissioned, and Richard is navigating and negotiating this at the moment, but there will be editions in Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, and Swahili. Now, these are languages which probably most of you haven't heard of. But I mean, something like Yoruba is spoken by about 100 million people, so not far away from Tamil readership and speaking. And actually, where we're getting to now is that something like 5 billion speakers of languages can now see my book because of this technology when it began just with English. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity for my thoughts, my concepts, my articulation in this book to reach an increasingly global audience, and specifically including Tamil, which, as I began by saying, is such an important member of the literary language, and has an important place, particularly in the Indian publishing scene. So I think I'll pause there. I don't know whether you'd like to ask me any questions, or whether you'd like to move on to Richard talking about the publishing of the book next.
கேள்விகள் இருந்தால் எழுத்தாளர்கிட்ட கேட்கலாம். Nadim, we just opened the floor for questions. If there are any, we'll just pass on.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This live book, I mean the book with which we can chat with, right? So I just have this question, like, has there anything been initiated or incepted, since you are from the, I mean, you are a domain expert in terms of marketing strategy. So when it comes to corporate environment, so is there any live book that has been already initiated when it comes to anything initiated on those lines? That's what I wish to ask.
I'm sorry to say that I struggle to hear the question, but I think I understand the thrust of it. And maybe the best answer I can give you is actually about what Shimmr AI does, which is the company that I run. It's an applied AI business that's focused on publishing. What we do is we take from publishers who want to get their books better discovered and to sell better. We take the EPUB, and we have three machines. One is called the Strategizer, and it understands the book intimately. It creates what we call book DNA. It understands the structure, it understands the psychological values, the social impact, any emotional hooks, and that becomes the creative brief for the second machine in our sort of chain of machines. It's an agentic framework. And that generator produces a campaign of advertising. It produces the creative assets, which are all faithful, absolutely intimately to the author's work. And when the generator is finished producing that series of creative assets, which will be videos and images and captions and so on, it gives it to the third machine, which is the media deployer, which then says, well, having understood exactly what the book is about, I'm now going to go and find the predisposed audience for this book on different platforms, initially with Meta and with Google, but spreading into Pinterest and Reddit and LinkedIn and various, wherever there's an audience that can be profiled and matched with the DNA of a book. That's what Shimmr does. And Porter Anderson, who you probably know from Publishing Perspectives, described it as reverse discoverability, where every book can find its audience. So instead of starting by saying we need a book for 40 to 50 or 5-year-old men who are considering retirement or something, you start a different way and say this book is about loyalty, sustainability, and ambition. And you go and you find people who are into those sorts of values, and then they look at the book and they say, that's exactly the kind of book I need to look at. So that's just a practical use of AI in the marketing, the advertising specifically of books.
Thank you, Nadim, for joining this event. We'll
Pleasure.
go ahead with Richard's session now. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.